We begin, though, with our Keeping 'Em Honest segment with the growing business of being Donald Trump and how it overlaps increasingly with the business of being president. And that overlap is embodied tonight in a replacement for Air Force One. More specifically, this converted 747 and its identical twin, which entered service during the George H.W. Bush administration. He's aboard it tonight en route to Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, including Qatar. Now, as you may know, Boeing is working on a successor to the current Air Force One based on the latest model 747. But the complexities of turning it into the kind of secure mobile command post a president needs is taking longer than expected, pushing back the delivery first from 2024 to 2028 or 2029. But more recently, Boeing says perhaps 2027. In any case, the president isn't happy about it.
Boeing, we're not happy with the service we're getting in terms of those planes.
So that was February 12th. A few days later, on the 18th, enter this 747, which happened to be at the West Palm Beach Airport near Mar-a-Lago, and which the president just happened to take a tour of, as one does. The White House at the time said it was so he could get a better idea of what the updated Air Force Ones might be like. The plane belongs to the Qatari royal family. Last night, the president confirmed the news, first reported by ABC, that the plane would be, in his words, all caps, a gift, free of charge, of the royal family. Now, as CNN and others have reported, the Defense Department would then have it modified and commissioned as a temporary Air Force One until Boeing can deliver theirs. After which, you might be thinking the Pentagon would find some use for that huge, enormous new aircraft, but you would be mistaken. But before getting into what happens afterward to that new plane the president wants to get from Qatar, listen to what the president said when asked about the ethics of this.
What do you say to people who view that luxury jet as a personal gift to you? Why not leave it behind?
You're ABC fake news, right?
Why not?
Only ABC. Well, a few of you would. Let me tell you, you should be embarrassed asking that question. They're giving us a free jet. I could say, no, don't give us. I want to pay you $1 billion or 400 million or whatever it is. Or I could say, thank you very much.
It's so easy. Now, before playing you what he said next, it might be a good time to read you a passage from the Constitution, which he's sworn to uphold and protect. No person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of the Congress, accept any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. Qatar, by the way, has all three. Their leader isn't a king, they call him an emir. The princes under him are called sheikhs, and it is a foreign state. In a moment, we'll ask a former White House ethics watchdog about it, and we'll discuss it with our panel members. But just on the face of it, a $400 million late model 747 would seem to be a gift, perhaps even the largest on record. And the emir of Qatar would appear to be a king of a foreign country. Attorney General Pam Bondi, however, has signed off on the deal on the grounds that this would not be covered under the emoluments clause that I just read you because it is a gift to the Pentagon, not the president. Okay, except, once again, the Pentagon will not be keeping this plane. And before telling you who will, which you probably already know, listen to whose authority the president cites to get around the Constitution of the United States.
There was an old golfer named Sam Snead. Did you ever hear of him? He won 82 tournaments. He was a great golfer. And he had a motto: when they give you a putt, you say, thank you very much. You pick up your ball and you walk to the next hole. A lot of people are stupid. They say, no, I insist on putting it. And then they putt it and they miss it. And their partner gets angry at them. You know what? Remember that, Sam Snead.
So by the president's lights, in the name of Slammin' Sammy Snead and the PGA, when someone drops a 747 into your hand, close your ever-loving fingers around it and say thanks. His press secretary, meanwhile, has another answer to all the questions this raises about a president being beholden to a foreign power that her boss, during his first term, accused of funding terrorism. And again, just to underscore, in 2017, he accused the very same country run by the very same royal family who just gave him this plane of backing terror groups. And now,
do you worry that if they give us something like this, they want something in return?
Absolutely not, because they know President Trump and they know he only works with the interests of the American public in mind.
Only works the interests of the American public in mind. There's no way they would have any other interests other just the kindness of their hearts. So that explains the meme coin he issued the day before taking office, which millions of Americans have invested in, 764,000 of whom lost money, but only an estimated few dozens have made millions from, and for which the president is hosting a dinner 10 days from now for the top 220 investors. That's the best interest of everybody. Or perhaps it's the Trump-connected crypto exchange World Liberty Financial, which recently closed a $2 billion deal with an investment firm in Abu Dhabi. Will that benefit the American public? If not, there's always his son's new crypto company, American Bitcoin, which announced just today that it's going public. They're all part of a growing Trump family business, none of which is meant to be in the public interest, none of which is in a blind trust, some or all of which could send or already is sending money Donald Trump's way from almost anyone, anywhere. And then there's Qatar, not the plane, though the golf resort. Less than 2 weeks ago, Eric Trump was there on behalf of the Trump Organization, closing a deal on it, part of a project worth an estimated $5.5 billion. But getting back to the $400 million used 747, here's the promised kicker. The Pentagon, meaning the public, will not get to keep it. The public will not, as the press secretary suggested, benefit from this. Taxpayers certainly will have the burden of paying to gut it, check for listening devices and sabotage, and then bring it up to Air Force One specifications, essentially doing what Boeing is already doing. And then when he leaves office, the president will take it with him. He will take it with him. He says it will go to his presidential library, which has not been built. And yeah, there is an old Air Force One right now at the Reagan Library, so it's not an outlandish thing to say, but it's a far, far smaller narrow-body 707, not a wide-body 747. Or even the smaller narrow-bodied aging two-engine 757 the president flew while out of office. Kind of makes it an appealing trade-off opportunity, no? With a source familiar with the situation tells CNN that's what it will be. He won't park it, this source tells us. He'll fly in it, but not to worry.
Do you plan to use the plane after you leave office?
No, I don't. No, it would go directly to the library after I leave office. I wouldn't be using it.
Yeah, he says that he won't after office fly in the gift from the country he once accused of funding terrorism. And his attorney general, who was once a lobbyist and once lobbied for Qatar, says it's ethically fine. And his press secretary, who says he only acts in the public interest, says Qatar won't ask for anything in return because he only acts in the public interest. Multiple Trump business deals, including in Qatar, notwithstanding. It's a lot to take on faith. Late today, 2 Republican senators expressed their doubts. Josh Hawley of Missouri saying it would be better if Air Force One were a, quote, big, beautiful jet made in the United States of America. And Florida's Rick Scott saying of the arrangement, I mean, that seems pretty nice, but they support Hamas, so I don't know. I just don't know how to make it safe. I don't want the president of the United States flying on an unsafe plane. CNN Chief White House correspondent Caitlin Collins starts us off tonight from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. She hosts The Source at the top of the hour. The Rick Scott quote is incredible. So, Caitlin, the president says he'd be stupid to not accept what he's calling a free gift, but he's not saying he'll get stuck paying for all these security and communication upgrades to the plane, namely the taxpayers, all of us, by way of the Defense Department. And the only thing more remarkable than that is the idea that when he leaves office, the plane is going to be gifted to his presidential library, which won't be built for quite some time, and seems highly unlikely he's not going to be using it. How fully baked is this plan?
That's what he said, Anderson. Obviously, our understanding before all of this came under scrutiny, when we were reporting initially about this deal and how this was set to happen over the weekend, was that he would be able to use it after he left office, and that would be the point of donating it to the presidential library. That had raised questions because there was an older model that was donated to the Reagan Library, for example, but he never used it. It was just on display. And so it raised questions about whether or not he would continue using it in just a matter of a few years from now once he is out of office. He's telling reporters definitively today that he will not be using it, that it'll go to the library. But obviously it's raised questions in terms of what this is going to look like in the immediate future, because initially what we had heard was that Qatar had offered up this plane. The president had been very frustrated by the delays in Boeing building the new Air Force Ones. They were going to be projected to not be ready until after he was out of office, despite being commissioned years ago. And he had even put Elon Musk in charge of it at one point. And there was some questions of whether or not they could just donate it to the library now, or whether or not it needed to go to the administration immediately. And the understanding was that it needed to go within the administration to where it would not violate the emoluments clause in the Constitution, for people who hear that word and think, what is that? It essentially violates public office holders in the United States from accepting gifts from a foreign government. And so I spoke to some Qataris over the weekend on my way here, actually, about how this would work. And our reporting was that it would essentially go in a transaction from the Qatari Ministry of Defense to the Pentagon. And then, as you noted, it would be the Pentagon who is in charge of modifying it and making it usable for the president, making all the safeguards and modifications there. And obviously that would come at the cost of the taxpayer dollar. And so that was really the settlement there. The president confirmed that today, that it would be going straight to the Pentagon, but then eventually to his presidential library. And so it has raised a lot of questions. And we're even seeing some Republican Senate pushback on Capitol Hill, Anderson, which, as you know, is pretty rare these days of a lot of the moves that the president makes. Rand Paul just a few moments ago was saying he doesn't think this is a good idea. And so I do think that's a question going forward of whether or not that changes how where this plane goes going forward. The Qataris over the weekend were essentially saying that this was still being worked out, this agreement. That was not what we heard from White House officials, who essentially said, yes, the president toured it. He had been talking privately about how luxurious and beautiful and large this plane was. And now they do expect to get this and be able to use it within the coming years.
President Trump says this luxury jet from the Qatari royal family, the reported price tag, as I said, about $400 million, is a, quote, gift free of charge. And they're pushing ahead. No pushback from the Attorney General, who, of course, had formerly been paid up reportedly $115,000 a month to lobby for the country of Qatar. So are there any strings attached to this?
Well, undoubtedly there are, but it doesn't make any difference because the Constitution forbids the president from accepting any present emolument, office, or title of any kind, whatever the Constitution says, from a king, prince, or foreign state without the consent of Congress. So he's got to come to Congress first. I've been getting a barrage of emails from right-wingers today saying, well, what about the Statue of Liberty? We took the Statue of Liberty, after there was a joint congressional resolution directing President Grant to accept it. He signed that on his last day in office, and that it ended up President Cleveland taking it, and it was embodied in statute. You got to go to Congress in order to accept a gift from a foreign government, which is what this is. And obviously, there's all kinds of national security complications because it's a government giving us this airplane, and there's all kinds of foreign policy implications. So Congress has got to debate it.
So let me ask you, I want to talk to you about that part, whether you have the votes. But first, when you mentioned the national security concerns, Jeff Zeleny just mentioned the 171 miles of wiring and the implication that, I'll just use the analogy, the Trojan horse analogy, right? To make sure that there aren't who knows what kinds of bugs in the era we live in, that it would have to essentially be completely taken apart and reassembled. So your total cost of the plane would be what? Could be $1 billion. What are the national security risks that you are most specifically worried about?
Well, apparently the Secret Service was very worried about, bugs and espionage and surveillance, naturally. Obviously, Qatar is very close to Saudi Arabia, and there's no reason Saudi Arabia wouldn't love to have a window into everything going on that airplane. So that's been raised by the government itself. But, of course, the concern of the framers was that you would get a president like Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't know a lot about the founding, but the founders knew a lot about him and his type, and they were afraid that you'd get someone as president who'd be willing essentially to sell the interests of the country out to specific foreign governments who would do business with him. And so there are a million foreign policy questions where we could be compromised by this.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would seem it's not something that should come from anyone, friend or foe, but obviously Ben Shapiro making the point, right? Qatar sits in the middle, right? Iran, Hamas, the Taliban, of course, all of that, it also close to Qatar. So I'm curious, though, when you get to what the Congress can do as a whole, okay, and where right now Senate Democrats, they're trying to force a vote, but when you say it has to go to Congress, let's just say it did, would it fail? I mean, this seems to be a case of right and wrong, but that's not necessarily what we're going to get from Republicans.
Well, see, and that's the whole thing. The way that Article 1, Section 9 is designed is that it goes to Congress because there's just a multiplicity of foreign policy questions and domestic policy and public integrity questions folded into it. And we've got to look at all that stuff. We shouldn't just be debating on TV. We should be investigating in Congress. How much will it cost to retrofit the plane? What are the kinds of bugs that could be put onto that plane? What's the history of Qatar's involvement with other people in the Trump administration and so on? We've got to look at that. Can we do it? Sure. All we need is another 3 or 4 Republicans to come with the Democrats to say, let's do our constitutional duty. We cannot let them get away with just trampling the emoluments clause, because it's not just these airplanes. We have to look at the whole crypto question too. The Trump family has been making more than $1 billion a month since the new administration started. And that's like the Trump Hotel on steroids. The money is just being funneled in through the presidential meme coin.
All right. Thank you very much, Congressman. I always appreciate your time. I'll note one of those crypto deals, of course, the New York Times is reporting worth $2 billion. That was in Dubai. Steve Witkoff's son also part of that. So also on the list of countries the president's visiting this week. Ryan Goodman is with us now, Outfront legal analyst, and Ben Smith, Semaphore editor-in-chief, host of the Mixed Signals podcast. So, Ben, you've got extensive reporting on this luxury jet from the Qatari royal family that, we understand could be worth $400 million, maybe more, could be $500 million. You've been looking at images, so what's inside this?
Yeah, the Swiss firm that was selling it had a listing up. They've taken it offline, but some of the details are still up there. And it was one of those things they don't put the price on. It would be sort of indiscreet, but it's beautiful. It has a private office with 4 chairs. There's a number of large screen televisions, a bedroom, kind of beautiful cream-colored furniture, wood tables.
You could paint it gold if you wanted.
You could paint it gold. I mean, I do think. I mean, it is, among other things, a huge black eye to Boeing, which has been on the hook for many years to build a new Air Force One, and among its many struggles hasn't been able to deliver one. And, I think if you view this, I think, there's a lot of conspiracy theories from our end, but if you view it from the perspective of these Gulf countries, all of them American allies, Qatar is a huge American military base right now.
Yep, the largest, yeah.
The President of the United States, like other leaders, like Erdogan, signals that he wants stuff from smaller countries that want to be friends of the United States. Of course they're going to get into a bidding war. There are 3 rivalrous countries to give the U.S. what it is asking for. I think I think this is a question of more demand than a demand side rather than a supply side.
I think you have a fair point. I also think that the giving gifts for expected reciprocity or intangible reciprocity is the way many countries work. And in that region, it is not considered corrupt. It's considered the way royal families operate.
Yeah, it goes
so
without saying.
If you're going to play in the rules they play by, they're happy to play.
Yes.
It's what they do.
The rules
Ryan,
many countries play by.
Right.
Yeah.
And Ryan, I mean, there are people out there saying that Senator Bob Menendez, former Senator Bob Menendez, got 11 years in prison for this, right? He was charged with accepting bribes, gold bars, and a Mercedes to benefit specifically the governments of Egypt and Qatar. Is that just people are rushing to, there's the word Qatar, so I'm going to say these 2 things are analogous, or is there a real legal link?
So there are a lot of similarities. If one brings a bribery case under criminal law, you have to prove there was an actual quid pro quo and that the bribe was done in exchange for some official act or conduct. That's what makes it very difficult. So it's quite narrow, and it's been narrowed by the Supreme Court. But the analogy to Senator Menendez is quite close. And it's, in fact, the Trump Justice Department that succeeds and says in late January of this year, look, we got an 11-year sentence on him. And part of what they, in fact, broadcast is because he, in exchange for gold bars, made public statements in favor of Qatar. So that's similar in character. And just to add one other point to it, the Supreme Court's ruling on immunity for a former president or a president does say essentially that bribery would obviously not count as an official act. So if this is bribery, with those constraints, then it is similar in character to Senator Menendez, which is a righteous prosecution.
I mean, and I know there's emoluments, but there's all the legal things. Then, as I said, the way I see this, it shouldn't be political. It's just not something the United States should be doing. Ben, but it's not the first time Qatar has done this. To the point of the language they speak, we've been talking about President Erdogan of Turkey.
The sort of most striking and kind of clarifying thing about this to me is in 2018, they did exactly the same thing. It was the same model jet. It's a VVIP 747 to President Erdogan of Turkey. And Turkey, not a perfect democracy, He's a strong man, but they do have an opposition
It's an
party,
autocratic government.
which raised hell about it because
Yep.
they thought it was inappropriate that the Qataris were giving, they're close ally,
Yes.
a plane. And Erdogan said, you know what, like I understand the issue, but this is Turkey's plane, not my plane. And when I'm done being president, this plane stays with the Republic of Turkey, which I think is not the plan here.
No, this what Trump has said, at least at this point, I understand, is that it would go to the Trump Presidential Library.
Not
it would
the
be for his
Erdogan
use.
Presidential Library.
Ryan, during Trump's first term, you had foreign diplomats staying at Trump properties, right? This was something that had received a lot of focus at Trump Hotel at the time in Washington, D.C., right? Also in New York on Central Park South/West. Trump at the time said, this is personal. It's personal. It's not official. So, I mean, but when you look at this and you look at what's happening in the region there, you got the crypto deal in Dubai, you have golf course in Qatar, you have money for Jared Kushner's firm, his investment firm, coming from Saudi Arabia, you have towers in Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's whack-a-mole.
Yeah, so the mix of personal and public benefits, I think, doesn't help Trump in this regard. And also goes to the question of why would the Qataris give him a $400 million plane unless they expected something in return. So that is going to him also personally. The idea that it ends after his presidency, I think, is also not helpful for him as a legal matter because it means it's just for him as Trump. It's not for the office of the President of the United States. So I think all of that adds up. And then one last bit is when this did happen in 2017 and 18, for Trump himself, and there were all these emoluments litigations, and I do expect we might find litigation on this particular issue. His defense was, no, these were commercial deals I was doing with my hotels and my real estate. Emoluments would only apply to me if it was something like my compensation and my perks, which you would think a gold-plated plane is a perk, and that's what his idea is of the Constitution and what it would prohibit. So,
I mean, it just take a step back, Ben. The reason we're talking about this now, and it's a big deal, is because it doesn't happen to every president. You don't have Qatar calling up and saying, hey, George W. Bush, I'm going to give you a plane, or Obama, or both.
I think they probably would have been very willing.
They would have been willing.
Indeed, yeah.
George W. Bush wouldn't have been willing.
Right.
Right? Obama would have. That's the difference, right? As you say, it's this demand side, not the supply side.
Yeah, and I think you saw Trump prosecuted and a wave of prosecutions that failed or that didn't prevent him from being president. And I think he feels he is immune from those now, and maybe not in a technical legal sense, but that's obviously how he's acting.
All right. Thank you both very much.
With outrage expressed by even some of his most stalwart supporters over what looks a lot like an attempt by Qatar to curry favor with President Trump. Some Democrats are calling it a bribe. President Trump today is defending a plan to accept a free up to $400 million luxury airplane from the Qatari royal family and then retrofit it so he can use it as Air Force One. It's raising serious ethical, legal, and security questions.
I think it's a great gesture from Qatar. I appreciate it very much. I would never be one to turn down that kind of an offer.
The White House notes that Attorney General Pam Bondi has signed off on this gift, though they failed to mention that Bondi, from 2019 to 2020, lobbied Congress on behalf of the government of Qatar, which we should also note supports Hamas and spreads propaganda via Al Jazeera. CNN's Tom Foreman has more on this plane, which Trump says would go.
The possibility of a $400 million gift jet from Qatar to serve as President Trump's new Air Force One is drawing lightning strikes of criticism. Trump's latest grift. It's not just bribery, it's premium foreign influence with extra legroom. And from the vice chair of the Senate Ethics Committee,
this is almost exactly the sort of gift that our founders had in mind that Americans shouldn't accept. And I'll remind you, other federal employees can't accept even $50.
The plane would appear to fly in the face of the U.S. Constitution's emoluments clause, which says no person holding any office shall, without the consent of Congress, accept of any present of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. Ask about that, Trump hit back.
It's not a gift to me, it's a gift to the Department of Defense.
Analysts say the gift plane would likely have to be entirely stripped down and rebuilt to make sure it does not hold technology detrimental to presidential security. After all, Qatar has long ties to Hamas, a terrorist group in the eyes of the U.S. government.
The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level.
Why is the United States of America accepting a gift of this magnitude from a foreign government that supported terrorist organizations.
In his first term, Trump hit upon the idea of revamping Air Force One, upgrading it, changing the color.
You know what colors we're using? Take a guess.
Red, white, and blue.
Red, white, and blue.
He became frustrated by the long, expensive process of doing all that. But now, Qatar has offered him a quick fix, and he's on board.
I would never be one to turn down that kind of an offer. I mean, I could be a stupid person, say, no, we don't want a free, very expensive airplane.
For Trump to say this is going to the Department of Defense, not to him, just doesn't really hold water, Jake, because the Department of Defense has its own rules beyond the Constitution that say you can't accept gifts like this. Simply put, they say, would you get this gift if you weren't in the office you hold? Pete Hegseth, Donald Trump, both could have been given this plane 2 years ago. Neither one were. Right, and the other thing is that the next president's not going to get to use it. My understanding is that President Trump, when he's done with his term, is taking this to his library.
Yeah, he says he won't use it again, but that's his word. And we've seen how that's worked out.
President Trump is currently en route to the Middle East. He has stops planned in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. But the main focus, of course, will be in Qatar, where Trump may be accepting a $400 million super luxury 747 gifted from the Qatari emir. It will be retrofitted to be used as Air Force One. It would be one of the largest presidential gifts ever. Is it ethical or legal? Trump says the plane will be donated to his presidential library when he's out of office and has no concerns about using a foreign plane as the president's flying command center.
We're talking about, we have 40-year-old aircraft. The money we spend, the maintenance we spend on those planes to keep them tippy-top is astronomical. You wouldn't even believe it. So I think it's a great gesture from Qatar. I appreciate it very much. I would never be one to turn down that kind of an offer. I mean, I could be a stupid person, say, no, we don't want a free, very expensive airplane.
Okay, Congressman McHenry, maybe I've seen the movie Air Force One too many times and the Americans TV show too many times, but how on earth is this a good idea to let a foreign government build a plane? Like, I thought it was like impossible to get rid of like a single bug that the Russians had hidden under the carpet in your house or something.
So like most things in the Trump era, two things can be true, right, at once. One is that we're using Air Force One long after its expected life. It is still a fabulous airframe. The airframe that is closest to it in the world, that is existent in the world, is owned by Qatar, right?
So there it is.
So
we're looking at
here's the complicated thing, which is to fly the president around. Any president around is a complicated thing. You need a complicated airframe for that flying White House, right? It is the only available thing that is equivalent to Air Force One in the world. So that can be true. It can also be true that taking a gift of this size from a foreign government, any foreign government, much less one that tries to be a pivot player, tries to be our friend, sort of, in Qatar.
the place where the talks with Hamas are hosted, right?
Well,
with the enemies, et cetera.
It's a complicated place. In all admit, right? But to accept a gift like that is problematic. You can say these two things at once. Yeah. It is an important airframe. But let's get back to this. Why are we in this situation as a great nation with Boeing headquartered here where we can't put the president in a stinking airplane?
Talk about
manufacturing.
Yeah, well, and so here, and Elliot, you can have this because to say, this is not, so like a lot of the president's fans aren't happy about this. So Laura Loomer, who's of course been up in the National Security Council and getting the president to fire people, says this: I love President Trump. I would take a bullet for him, but I have to call a spade a spade. We cannot accept a $400 million gift from jihadists in suits. I think that's perhaps you were trying to say something a little bit more delicately.
I wouldn't say it that way, but okay.
You would not have said it that way, but this is how Laura Loomer is saying it. The Qataris fund the same Iranian proxies and Hamas and Hezbollah who have murdered U.S. service members, the same proxies who have worked with Mexican cartels. This is really going to be such a stain on the administration if this is true. And I say this as someone who would take a bullet for Trump. I'm so disappointed.
She was literally quoting Alexander Hamilton from the Federalist Papers, but just using sharper language about why the Constitution has an emoluments clause because of the.
We have that too. We can put that up on the screen. The emoluments clause.
From Article 1 of the Constitution that executive branch or government people are prohibited from taking gifts from foreign governments to avoid the kind of
There it is.
to avoid the kinds of conflicts that Laura Loomer was talking about here. This is literally baked into American law. What I was going to, and she's sort of touching on what I was going to ask you about, Patrick, and it's what would, and I'm genuinely curious about this, you know, you've been a member of Congress, what would your constituents, Republican constituents, say about something like this?
It depends what they think about Trump. It's in the Trump era, it's all about Trump. This whole discussion, we had 49 South Africans come to the United States as refugees, 49, and we're doing a whole block about it. Right? So this is all about Trump. It is all about Trump.